Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to ask, what encouraged you to participate at the FOM event and share your knowledge with others?
I've been coming to FOM since its inception. This is my third year, and having seen what's been said, what's been discussed, and really last year one of the topics hit a chord with me. The answers then sparked ideas. I was thinking about it afterwards, and then when Rob approached me and said, would you like to be on the stage and discuss? Thinking, well, I want to take the idea that I've got, run with it, so yeah, absolutely, I need to get involved.
Excellent. So why do you think obsolescence is such a hot topic today? I mean, obsolete was there all the time, but
we've always had obsolescence. I've just been talking about obsolescence and change. The two are linked. The third part of that triangle that's coming in is the technology. So the way that we're moving forward, the development in consumer electronics, the progression that's being made is forcing more and more obsolescence. We've transitioned away from the bespoke manufacture of own parts, certainly in the mill aero business. So we want to use the commercial grades, the COTS components. Their quality is improved, which means that we have more availability, they're more suitable for our products, and they last, certainly in the application. From there, we've then gone away from anything bespoke, and we're open to the market forces and the manufacturer's whims. But when the manufacturer starts to see a decline, then we tend to get the feeling that if the volumes are dropping and the production is no longer profitable on a standard range of components, as soon as the curve comes down, then the discontinuation will follow. What's feeding into that, of course, is the demand. And where's the demand coming from? Because we're using the COTS components, because technology is moving faster, because people want ever smaller devices, faster devices, increased functionality, then of course the change is driving the obsolescence.
What do you see as the biggest threat for the security of the supply chain?
The security of the supply chain depends on communication between each of the layers and the levels. The more that companies start to outsource, the more that companies become bigger, more global, more dominant with their footprint, the further removed the actual design site and the OEM becomes from their sub-tiers and their sub-levels. And I think we need to do something to really increase and improve those channels of communication through the supply chain.
In a perfect world, you would never have to deal with the open market and buy directly from the manufacturer or official channels, and everything comes on time. But in reality, that's slightly different. So what would you think is the best practice to work effectively with the open market?
So again, the communication channels. If we are dealing with the open market, we need to be upfront and honest about what it is that we're looking for, but also about what the requirements are. We need to know, or we'd certainly like to know, all of the provenance and history of any component. And then when we have that level of information, we want to be able to share that information with our customer. There's obviously standards that have then been developed around this. I'll say will force or encourage us to work in a certain manner, but at the same time we need to engage with that chain, that supply chain base.
Is there any particular way that you are measuring your I would call it open market suppliers in?
Our use of open market source is very, very sparse. Certainly for flight equipment. So at the moment we don't have supply performance reviews, we wouldn't have that level of monitoring. In the future, depending on what happens with the level of risk and change, availability, allocation, from that perspective we may start to introduce new monitoring metrics, which will come down to the authenticity, the level of documentation that will be provided, the level of test that can be offered by the company or by any sub-tier, and then it's going to be the standard cost, quality, delivery.
That's the three. Yeah, that's the three. The
always be the three.
Golden triangle. Yeah. So considering that, how do you see the future of obsolescence management? What can make it better? What are your fear or hopes?
The channels of communication need to improve. We had the workshop yesterday, and as part of the workshop I was looking at the data management. The data management side was obviously looking at what can be done with the likes of Silicon Expert. And then when we use Silicon Expert to interrogate bills of materials, we look at forecasting, and again we then take that data and what can we do with it. What we then started to look at was, for those channels of communication, do we have the benefits, or can we use what's already there and use the likes of Silicon Expert who are in contact with the lower tier? So do we skip EMSs in our supply chain using Silicon Expert to then potentially draw in information about maintainability, manufacture and areas?
PCNs?
Not so much the PCNs, but more the changes in the industry. What is happening with the players? Who's buying who? So what's happening on the mergers and acquisitions? When the mergers and acquisitions do happen, then can Silicon Expert do an overlay of the technology types? Yes, there'll be a lot of differences because that makes sense for the companies. But where there's the technology overlap, then rather than me and Rolls-Royce and Meggitt, Moog, Crane, UTC all trying to contact the same companies through different contacts, if Arrow, Silicon Expert, Converge have got that level of contact, then why don't we have one single point of contact, draw in that information into a tool that already exists, that a lot of people are already using, use that benefit, then actually make that information available to us obsolescence managers, designers, so then we can start to see and assess what risks are likely to be coming.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It is, yes. And within this, I mean, one of the things that we've seen is I wouldn't say unqualified, but just buyers have to make decisions. So my question would be, what do you think is the role of senior management within the process of obsolescence management?
Senior management definitely need to understand some of the risks that are in there. Looking at the presentation we've just had, and you talk about the perfect world, do people believe that we have a perfect world where we're able to place an order, run everything through our ERP and MRP systems, and orders are placed? We've got to acknowledge reality that doesn't happen day in, day out. 99% of it is taken care of, but for that 1% to 2% that cause the problems, then what are the details behind it? What drive it? What are the risks? How do we need to assess those risks? Because at the end of the day, we have the customer who we need to fulfill the order for.
Knowing what you know now, let's say a friend of yours starting a new job in the obsolescence management, what advice could you give him?
Well, let me tell you my own background. I'm an engineer, and then I ended up in supply chain, and then I ended up working in obsolescence. I became an engineer because I didn't want to have 2 days to be the same. There's so many different areas and multifacets of it. You've got exactly the same with obsolescence. No 2 days are the same. You get involved with change management, configuration management, you deal with multiple program teams, you can look at the financial side of it, you get stuck into the data. And if you want something that's different every single day, then it does work. Recommendation that I'd give to somebody, if you're starting it and it's working and you're trying to establish a system, then try it. If it doesn't work, acknowledge the fact that you can then change. Every company is different, every organisation is different. As individuals, we deal with the change and the obsolescence. It's always in a different manner. It's got to be specific for your industry and for your company and for your products. And if there's different strategies and different ways that you can manage and handle that data, even for different project programs within the industry, within your industry, then follow that. Do what works.
How do you see the importance of having such a community to share their ideas and the best practice out there in the market?
I think the community is wonderful. The spirit, the engagement is high. Once a year, if we could do it twice a year, would be better, so we can get more communication going. The benefits of coming to somewhere like this is then chatting and talking about, well, what's happened on this device. I've seen allocation here. Even ceramic capacitors have gone out on lead time. What's happened? Why? Where's the demand coming from? What's driving it? If there was more information available through a central point as opposed to just discussion forums once a year.
Yeah.
Go back to again what you said about the future of obsolescence, that the future is going to be the forecasting and responding before it's obsolete.